Good evening. My name is Craig Forrestal, and you are going to listen to my graduate research project that is going to focus on transformational leadership in education. Welcome, fellow classmates and Dr. Sanchez. And without any further ado, I would like to roll in to the introduction of the presentation. So the first thing we will cover is going to be the program format. The program format can be divided into 4 parts. The first phase is going to focus on transformational leadership, what it is, and then also its role in education. The second phase is going to consist of the impact on various educational demographics. Third will be research and findings. And the fourth and final phase will offer a conclusion and suggestions. As we move through the presentation, please keep the following in mind. The impact and significance of transformational leadership in the education system and the role it plays for faculty development, along with student development and success. As I mentioned at the beginning of the topic and discussion, my name is Craig Forrestal. As you can see, my current position is an academic coordinator at Indian River State College. I work with the Upward Bound Math and Science program, which is a college preparatory program that is housed on the Fort Pierce campus of Indian River State College. In my job duty, I am responsible for a lot of day-to-day tasks and outcomes that are vital to our program. But if I were to break my position down into its 3 most important areas and job functions, it would be to serve the students with any and all academic needs, to manage, train, and retain instructional staff, and also the development and implementation of curriculum for our program. Before I became an academic coordinator, you can see my additional experiences. Most recently, I served as an admissions counselor. Before that, I was an academic advisor. Both of those positions focused on science-related fields. And also, when I first got out of college, I worked as a business consultant. My experiences as a business consultant in other educational roles has set me up to take on what I feel is the perfect blend for me of business, networking, academics, and also analytics, research, and observational findings. So now as we move into phase 1, I want us to get into the mind frame of a transformational leader. But in order to get into the mind frame of a transformational leader, we have to come up with a working definition. So that working definition is going to be what is listed below. Please take a moment to read through that, become familiar with that definition, because as we move forward for the duration of this conversation, transformational leadership is going to be discussed, expressed, and interpreted with the following definition. So, now that we have an understanding as to what transformational leadership is, let us look at its place in education. Why is now the right time to explore transformational leadership? The below quote from Geoffrey Canada can be seen on his TED Talk, in which he was discussing the failures of our educational system. The title of that TED Talk is Our Failing Schools, Enough is Enough. As you can see, Mr. Canada outlines a practice that has been in existence for generations. Why is it that students failed 50 years ago and they still fail today? Think about that from a business model. If you were a business and you saw that you were not hitting your metrics and you were not reaching the goals that you had set in place for you to be deemed successful, and every year you saw that you were missing those numbers and missing those goals, would you not sit down and have an examination of your business practices in which your core focus is? That is something that the educational system needs to do. As we look how society has shifted into a digital economy, we can also see how the job market has transformed into a digital and technologically based job market. In just a couple of years, there will be over 1 million new jobs that will be created across the globe that will have a digital focus and or component as part of its main responsibilities. At the same time, 90% of organizations have a shortage when it comes to IT skills. Now, to compound that staggering statistic with an even more alarming rate of 75% of educators and students that feel there is a considerable gap between their ability and the ability that is needed to compete in the IT workforce. If we have outlined that the educational system has been imperfect for some time, and if we look at how the business world and also our day-to-day world has changed, we would see that there would need to be a shift in a lot of other areas as well. So why is it that we have not shifted educationally to meet the demands of our society? Hopefully by the end of this presentation, we can come up with a compelling argument as to why. Now, as we move forward, we can go ahead and we can look at the 5 standards of quality listed on the left. These 5 standards of quality are Standard 1, purpose and direction, Standard 2, governance and leadership, Standard 3, teaching and assessing for learning, Standard 4, resources and support systems, and finally, the 5th standard, using results for continuous improvement. Now, all of these standards align to one of the 7 dimensions. These 7 dimensions are used as characteristics of leadership. Now, if we can look at how these 7 dimensions lend themselves in the world of education, we can get a greater understanding for what the quality should be as a direct outcome of the dimension. So, when establishing school goals in a vision, the standard that should be reached, without a doubt, should be purpose and direction. There should be a clear purpose and direction when evaluating the vision and the goals of the school. If there is not a clear vision and goal that has been set, then standard 1 has not been achieved. We can continue down and we can apply that example to other scenarios as well. I will allow everyone to take a moment to look at the 7 dimensions, which are labeled with a green box, and also look at the standard that they correlate to. Now, we're moving into the second phase of the presentation, and that second phase is going to focus on the impact of various educational demographics. First, we will talk about the impact on the staff. A transformational leader. In this regard, a transformational leader in the educational setting can be regarded as the principal. Now, the principal should be able to bring out the following characteristics in their employees. We can look at identity, variety, autonomy, and feedback as those 4 characteristics. Now, if we can put special focus on the final 2 listed, autonomy and feedback, we can see where growth can really take place amongst the staff. If the principal is able to empower his staff, empower his instructional staff, by giving them the freedom that is needed to encourage positive learning and positive learning outcomes, then the instructor will be more confident in delivering ideas and educational opportunities that have been deemed outside of the box. These outside the box educational opportunities can be met with some resentment because it is seen as a risk. And while, yes, risks should be taken with a calculated approach and should have a decision that has been made with facts, statistics, and logic all combined, it is also important to remember no risk, no reward. If we see that the educational system has had students failing for generations, maybe it is time to take a risk. This risk can allow teachers the ability to reach that one child in their classroom, that one child that makes all the difference. Because in an environment that is not seen as so rigorous and constraining that the student population is used to, it can allow for greatness to happen. These great strides need to take place, start at the top, and watch the full trickle-down effect take place. Finally, feedback. It is important to know where you currently stand and where your superiors view your talents. If you're operating in the dark, it is nearly impossible to make any progress or any transgressions. If you do not know where you stand in the eye of the beholder, it is impossible for you as an individual to gauge what you need to do to correct any insufficient or unsatisfactory performance reviews that you receive. If you don't know how to get better, and if you don't know what you need to do to get better, then it is not going to be a situation in which you can see continuous growth. When feedback is received, it allows the individual to work from a position of power by identifying what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what tactics work in the classroom, and which tactics do not. When an individual is able to get a comprehensive review of their shortcomings and their successes, it allows them to tie together the loose ends with concrete visual evidence sitting before them. Whatever the metric or whatever the performance measurement tool that is used to generate this feedback is up to the institution itself. The crucial part is receiving this feedback and making sure that continuous feedback is given to the instructors. Because when you teach the same information to 6 or 7 different class periods, and you do that for a prolonged period of time, it is possible for burnout or for a lack of enthusiasm to pop through every once in a while. By keeping the mind fresh and by coming up with different ways to invigorate the classroom, not only will autonomy help the students, it will also create a positive result for the instructors. And then you'll see how that autonomy will yield a more positive performance review. As we were just talking about the instructional staff within a school and educational organization, we now must look at the instructors as transformational leaders themselves in the classroom setting. How we will identify the instructors as transformational leaders for this concept will be through the idea of critical pedagogy. Critical pedagogy is fundamentally concerned with understanding the relationship between power and knowledge. Knowledge is socially constructed and deeply rooted in power relations. Critical pedagogy asks how and why knowledge is constructed the way that it is. And also following that up with the how and the why that some of these constructions are accepted and legitimized by a dominant culture, while other constructions, other theories, and other ideologies are not accepted by a dominant culture. Creating critical thinking scenarios engages student conversation, engages the student to participate. And when they are engaged and they are conversing, they are learning. So now, if we continue down the slide, we will see that there is a list of guidelines that has been drawn up for instructors to keep in mind. Now, I'll give everyone a moment to look over those items. Taking your time is key because not everybody learns at the same rate or the same speed. You have some students that will be highly intelligent, but will need to have the main highlights of the concept repeated possibly a second, third, or fourth time before they have a full understanding. There are other students that will be able to draw the line from start to finish before you are even halfway through the lesson. Both students, highly intelligent, both students, different styles of learning. So it's important for an instructor to take their time. Taking their time not only allows you to drill home all the finer details of the lesson, but by slowing yourself down, it allows you to scan the classroom and identify the learning and behavioral patterns of your classroom population in their natural learning environment. This will tell you which students may need additional help because you will be able to pick up on the subtleties of their body language as they are progressing through the in-class assignment or as they are following the in-class lecture. Asking why. Why did this happen? Why would you do it that way? Why does history repeat itself? The question why forces the students to go to a place in their mind that allows them to understand their own beliefs and also allows them to critically reflect on those beliefs. They're able to acknowledge powerful emotions such as racism, classism, sexism. By doing this, we are engaging our student population to recognize their own power and expertise, also while seeing it through new eyes. By seeing it through new eyes, it encourages our student population to have serious conversations with individuals of similar and conflicting viewpoints, but how to have that conversation in a mature, articulate, and respectful manner. Now, not only do these 16 guidelines create a positive learning environment for the students, however, it creates additional growth for the instructor by having them be cognizant of these different performance metrics, tools, and strategies to create a more dynamic classroom. So, not only do the students see a positive outcome and an increased outcome, as a result of these 16 guidelines, but the instructors themselves continue to grow because they too are exposed to the same tools and mechanisms of the critical pedagogy. The impact on student populations. As you can see, the keys to creating a positive outcome for students are going to touch on a lot of different areas. Distributed leadership is crucial. Distributed leadership is going to play a part in nearly all of the other items listed. By distributing leadership, a principal is able to get teacher commitment. If a teacher feels that they are fully supported by the school, the administration, and the surrounding district, they are more willing and more likely to go above and beyond for that principal to ensure that the metrics, the goals, and the objectives for the upcoming school year are met. The principal-teacher relationship is so important in the educational organization because it sets the tone for the classroom. When an instructor feels that they are invested in not only professionally but personally, that comes through in the classroom. That same care that the principal shows for the instructional staff is then in turn shown by the instructional staff to the student population in the classroom environment. As you move down, the distributed leadership plays a huge role in professional development by identifying which individuals within the organization may show the competencies or the innate ability to make managerial decisions. You will be developing leadership within your organization, within your school walls, for when development opportunities present themselves. Also, this is a proactive strategy for individuals if they look to move forward with their career within the district. There's also evidence to suggest that student engagement and participation in school is a strong predictor of student achievement. Greater participation is defined as the following: students being involved in classroom work, students participating in extracurricular activities, students that set goals and maintain a solid attendance record, and also this is a significant predictor of students developing engagement with the school. When students feel attached to the school and feel they are more than just a student ID number, that is when they become involved in the classroom discussions, participate in extracurricular activities such as volleyball, basketball, theater, and also will make those goals to have a B average or to be on the honor roll. And because they feel connected and because they are involved and because they have this sense of pride within the school, they will maintain solid levels of attendance. Moving into phase 3. Phase 3 is going to consist of research and findings as it pertains to transformational leadership in education. The two listed studies on the slide are going to be used for a majority of the research findings and outcomes that will be discussed in the coming slides, unless noted otherwise. Earlier, we discussed the 7 dimensions as it related to transformational leadership in the educational setting. Those 7 dimensions were paired with a standard of quality. Those standards were labeled Standard 1 through Standard 5. And now we are going to spend more time discussing those dimensions. Please take a quick moment to look at some of the suggestions that have been put into place through the dimensions, as it will promote a positive aspect regarding transformational leadership. The first component in the transformational leadership dimensions is creating a shared vision. This shared vision is important as it sets the tone for the organization. This vision is going to reflect the organization as a whole. This vision is going to be comprehensive of the instructors, the principal, the school staff, and everyone else that is affiliated with the successful outcome of this institution. Now, in order for this vision to be successful and in order for the desired outcomes to become true, it is going to require the full commitment and buy-in of not only the educational staff, but also the teachers and the student population as well. Second, developing trust. Transformational leaders are known for igniting change from the bottom up. Transformational leaders have to develop trust in the educational setting because the decision making is not solely on the shoulders of the principal. While ultimately the principal is the one that has to defend the decisions, it is nearly impossible for one individual to handle all managerial and operational aspects of an educational facility. That is why developing trust with your educational instructional staff is so important to the success of a institution. By developing this trust with educational instructional staff, the principal will be building a pipeline of talent for future positions within the organization and will also be identifying his instructional educational staff as people that he has all the faith in the world in to make a decision and to take on additional responsibility when needed. By building this trust with the educational and instructional staff, what it's going to do is it's going to establish the concept of trust at a very early stage in the relationship. This is vital because without having a trustworthy relationship that is built on respect, it is going to be impossible to have a transformational educational environment that is going to be impactful on all levels. So by identifying the educators and the instructional staff that will serve as a pocket and a resource of knowledge when needed is going to be crucial to furthering the development and furthering the objectives and the vision of the school in the future. Instructional leadership, support, and supervision. Now, while it is important for the principal to provide support, supervision, and instructional leadership, how this is accomplished is ever changing. Now, while these elements are still important to improving school effectiveness and the overall efficiency of the institution, as stated in the previous slide, it is no longer believed that one administrator can handle all of those duties by themselves. So rather than specifically focusing on control and a direct coordination of events and daily activities, it is important to serve in a supervisory role when it comes to curriculum development and instructional delivery. Also, a transformational leader seeks to build the organization's capacity. So how do we take this educational organization from point A, where we currently are, and get to point B, where we want to be, where our goals are finally reached and obtained? That is done by being people-oriented. Rather than focusing on the task and the overall performance, a transformational leader believes that it is important to build a relationship with the individuals within the organization to balance the tasks and performance. This is going to help followers develop goals and identify strategies for their own accomplishments. Now, by doing this and building up that relationship with the instructional staff, it allows transformational leaders to employ strategies to help the teachers. Now, this is going to be where the developing and trying out of new ideas and taking that creative approach to educational opportunities is going to flourish. And now, once all of those factors hit, the principal will benefit from appreciating and understanding how unique his educational instructional staff is, and by also being able to draw back a direct line to the motivating factor and the significance that it played in reaching the final outcome. And by having that knowledge We talked about constant feedback, the continuous development. Now the principal is going to have additional examples and going to have another avenue to venture down when it comes to motivating an employee. So this is going to yield more positive results for this principal in the future if used appropriately. Distributed leadership. In order for effective change to take place, the teachers as well have to be viewed as an agent of change. If the teachers are not viewed as an agent of change, then whatever the principal does as far as establishing and creating a culture will be done for nothing. If that culture is not encouraged by the teachers, then the principal has failed to present a clear and direct objective for the school. Now, if the principal is able to establish a new culture and that culture is encouraged and accepted by the instructors, what you will be able to do is you will be able to see that the learning community has a shared vision and goal. They use a work culture that is best served in a collaborative environment. There are places where collective learning should take place. It is expected that the institution is an environment of collective learning and that shared understanding exists. There's also a focus on reflective practice, reflecting on what you did well, reflecting on what you didn't do well, reflecting on trends in the educational sector, reflecting on trends in your classroom, reflecting on trends in student population, reflecting on trends in the social schematics of the institution. Were the so-called popular kids of the school heavily involved in football a decade ago, and now they are more so involved in another extracurricular activity such as soccer or golf or theater, then that would also allow you to know the psyche of your student population. Developing community members, that is supporting the well-being of all school members. So this is accomplished by the recognition and the support of the intellectual, emotional, physical, moral, and spiritual well-being of the staff. If the principal is able to meet his staff on an intellectual, emotional, physical, moral, and spiritual level, then the principal will be able to establish a more personal and deeper connection with the teachers. This is taking out that very cut and dry approach to management of deliver your lesson, administer an exam, grade the exam, report back with the graded exams. Repeat cycle until the end of the year and whenever we need to report student outcomes. That very cold approach to management is what leads to poor levels of self-value and self-reflection and self-understanding of where you fit into the organization. So by doing that and forming a positive personal connection by reaching your staff on one of those 5 levels that were mentioned earlier, it will create a positive relationship, and that is essential for change and change management within the school community, because you are showing that this is going to be different and you're connecting on a deeper level, but that has to come across as genuine, because if there's any suspicion that it is not coming from a sincere place in one's heart, then that could blow up in their face later. Redesigning the school organization. Both the school environment and our day-to-day lives are becoming more complex. Therefore, we must meet this shift by being flexible and by being adaptable to those shifts. So, there needs to be a collaborative culture that is built, and there needs to be a reculturing of the organization. Look at what we did wrong, as Mr. Canada pointed out in that quote from earlier in the presentation. We've been doing this wrong for so many years. And then the following bit of information on that slide. Look at the job gap that is going to be here in just a couple of years. Why do we not plan? Why do we not redesign? Why do we not rebrand? Why do we not re-educate? Why do we not reevaluate? Again, asking why for a deeper understanding, which we covered in the critical pedagogies. By redesigning the organization, we're trying to make sure that we become learning organizations. And that means that there is an understanding of system thinking. Learning understands how everything's interconnected. People, the students are connected to the ideas are connected to the reputation of the school. The reputation is connected to the history is connected to the goals. Everything plays off one another. And now if we change one area, we change them all. If we change our goals and we hit our goals, the negative history, the negative reputation, the negative viewpoint of our student population is washed away because we changed one aspect. And now you will see, if you go into an educational organization, that schools often function on a very individualistic basis rather than as a collaborative organization. When the main goal is to graduate students and to make sure that a student leaves your classroom with more knowledge than what they walked into, there should be no division in resources. There should be no division in plan. There should be no division in anything about your day-to-day operation other than the curriculum to which you deliver. Other than that, everything is the same. Commitment to change and adapting to local and global context. You have to be forward thinking. Going back to that initial example of the job gap and the job crisis that we may be facing in a couple of years, we need to be forward thinking. We need to be moving the needle forward. We need to be seeing what the trends are in our global economy. We need to see how we're moving as a global economy. And we need to see the job demands that are going to come from this shift. To plan for the year 2018, in the year 2018, by redesigning a educational system for a child that is in the 11th grade, we haven't done anything. But if we're able to plan for the year 2018 in 2008, and we're able to reach that same student that is now in the 11th grade in kindergarten, first, second grade, now we have a chance at meeting that global demand and that global shift. Now, moving on to phase 4, conclusion and suggestions. Now, the educational system is evolving, and there's a focus on providing a comprehensive educational approach for students. However, there has to be a push to develop leaders who are able to meet the metrics and are able to compete on the global scale of what the 21st century has presented us. We need to look at creating a principal preparation program. There needs to be some sort of program that is enacted, that or is adopted, or that is put in place that is going to identify individuals that are set for a management position, a principal position. They have management trainee programs throughout a variety of business sectors. They have management trainee programs that develop wonderful results. And that practice needs to be applied within education. Um, there, there's a very, I guess I'll say, there's a very weird dynamic in the education system where once you get to that managerial level, once you get to that principal type level, dean, VP, um, you know, any of those levels in the education sector, it seems like when you're there for a long time. The problem is because the job stability and because of the length of duration that you will hold a position like that, there is not an emphasis put on developing the leadership of tomorrow. However, for instance, with the baby boomers, as retirement gets closer and closer by the day for that generation, what do we do when those management positions are left open and we do not have a pipeline developed to jump in to those positions to keep the organization afloat? As we continue to revamp and change education, we need to keep this practice in mind. And then also, in order to meet the demands of the ever changing society, what we need to do is we need to determine which pedagogies and assessment practices are going to be used by educational leadership teams on all levels to prepare the leaders of education to challenge the current system. To have a non-standard curriculum is a disadvantage to the education system because it does not afford and provide educators in an adequate playing field to compare what a third grader in Houston is learning compared to a third grader in California compared to a third grader in New Jersey, because they're all learning something different. If we've developed and identified a curriculum that meets the demands of the economy, that meets the demands of society, then we will have a curriculum that is going to meet the demands of the educators and the students. As we continue to look at conclusions and suggestions, what we need to do is, going back to the principal preparation program, we really need to make sure that we have these programs running in unison. The local colleges need to pair up with the 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 elementary, middle, and high school education community in their local areas, both private and public, because they serve as a wonderful resource with the amount of available opportunities that are on these college campuses. And by partnering with the local organizations, the local educational organizations, it strengthens the community partnerships. And then it really allows for maximum talent to have a generalized meeting place and location. And now that way, if I am teaching at a high school on the east side of town, but the principal job on the west side of town at the other high school opens up, because of that commonality, because of that prep program, because of that generalized meeting location for the local area, I am now viewed as a candidate and as a familiar face with the administration and the hiring body for the high school on the west side. So we need to do that, because by having us all work together, it has us create that unified curriculum plan on how we make sure students are as successful as they can possibly be from time they're in kindergarten, by the time they hit 12th grade, and then when post-secondary educational opportunities present themselves, they have a vocational plan, an academic plan in place that is going to yield not only solid monetary value to their lives once they complete the program, but is also going to afford them the opportunity to get a job in something that meets the demand of the current economy and the current jobs scape that we are in. What this means. What this means is a good school is a place where everyone is teaching and everyone is learning simultaneously under the same roof. That's a quote from Roland Barthes. And if we're really going to look at what this presentation means, this presentation means everyone's learning and everyone's teaching. That means there is no division. That means that it is a unified front on the educational organization to make sure that they have metrics in place, that they have tools in place, they have resources in place, and they've conducted enough research to know what is going to work and what is not going to work in yielding positive student outcomes and positive environments. So in order to do that, you need to have a transformational leader who is a visionary, that is not afraid to step outside the box of reality and normalcy as dictated by a dominant culture, and also that is going to make sure that these strategic moves and initiatives are introduced in a way and in a fashion that will not overwhelm the student population, that will not overwhelm the instructional staff, but will bring about very recognizable and very tangible positive results. This last slide is a list of references that were used throughout this presentation. That concludes my synopsis and my discussion on transformational leadership and education. Thank you to the class of HRT6570. Wish you all continued success in all your endeavors.